Hear me? Every once in a while I'll ask for a thumbs up. You guys are good? You can hear me okay? Yeah, good. Okay, so this should be better. You should be able to see me better from here. And I'm just going to check my camera for a second. I'm trying to have video of each of the practices that we do, so then I can post the video. And this doesn't show you guys, it just shows me. But that way the video will be available so that then if you want to repeat the practice, you just load it up, right? Good. So we have the right arm, and we were doing wrist cuts. We were doing elbow cuts. We were doing shoulder cuts, right? Or long compass, with the understanding that it could be anything in between, right? And we could have footwork involved as well, which we haven't talked about, which is fine. So, what are we going to do next? Now, we're going to do the same thing, except instead of landing on the right fendente line, which goes from teeth to knees, let's have our right shoulder, right foot forward. That way our right foot's aligned with our right hand. So to explain this for a second, if we had our left foot forward, we'd be reaching across the body. Right foot forward, we're reaching out. We're extending out into what we call longa in the wrestling section. So this is our longest reach with the weapon in one hand. So instead of striking right fendente, we're going to strike left fendente. We're going to have right foot forward. We're going to start with hammer in the one hand, and we're going to do short wrist cuts to the left fendente. Now, how is this going to be different, right? Before we were going to the outside, we were covering to our shoulder side, right? What we call the outside of our body. Now we're going to recover to the inside. So the hand's going to go up this way, and then the axe head's going to go, the hammer head's going to go back, and then come out. So we're doing the same body mechanic, only to the left side instead of to the right side. Now, I'm so used to fighting behind the weapon that this will often cause my face to be obscured when I'm doing these drills. So I'm going to try to make sure that I don't do that, just for the purpose of demonstration here. The exact same body mechanic, except going to the inside instead of the outside. So let's walk through that. We have the hammer coming forward, striking to the right instead of to the left of their head in the medieval context, and then recovering, and then bringing the false edge, the spike, back towards us. And then when it's pointing about straight down, then we start to turn the head over because we want to chamber for the next strike. We'll do two more, and then I'll step to the side so you can see that from the side. And if we all remember, towards the end, I'll show what this looks like with a shorter sword, just for context. Good. I'm going to step to the side. I'll show this from the side a couple of times, and then we'll switch to the left hand. So this should look very similar to what we did before, because it is very similar, except now we're bringing the hammerhead down to the left. And then back, right about here, I start turning the wrist over, and now it's chambered and ready to go forward. Now with the sword, you'll be very aware of the blade alignment. In this case, we're substituting the hammer head and the hammer spike as our awareness of where the blade is. So the blade, if in this case, is coming back, turning over, and accelerating out with the hammer head, which stands in for what we call the true edge with the sword. Good. Roll your shoulder. I'm just going to take a second, see if I remember where I put my shorter weapon. So just keep drilling for a second. I will be right back. There it is. So, like I said, just to provide context, here's a machete. That's It was a $5 machete that I upgraded by putting a cross guard and a handle on. to make just a small training tool. So what we've been doing, true edge, rotating the weapon back, accelerating out. So I think you can see here the false edge coming back and the true edge coming out. Now in this case, with the machete, which is a close cousin to a messer, we have sharp edge, blunt edge, right? So then it becomes even more clear when we're coming out with the cutting edge and then coming up and then recovering with the blunt edge and then coming out. And it's this acceleration phase there that does the work, that does the damage. And I was striking to the picture instead of striking to the camera, which makes all the difference, right? So I should be striking to there, actually. Now the cuts we're working on here are what they call reversi, right? Reverso. Coming back, turning the blade over, now it's chambered and coming out, right? So that's what it looks like. And that, again, coming back to apartment friendly sort of drilling, it comes with a sheath, so you can put a sheath on it and train without accidentally hitting something. And it's short enough that I can do it even with short ceilings here. So let's switch the left hand. Left foot forward, left hand, and we're going to strike to the inside, which in this case is going to be to the right. And then turn the handle over, and then rotate back, and then turn over, and then out. Now, some classes will do this for an hour. I tend to be impatient, and I tend to go through and say, let's do this for 5 minutes and move on to the next thing, and let's cover as much material as we can in the class. Part of my goal with these videos is to instill a little bit more patience and discipline into myself through subjecting you guys to more repetition. I mentioned earlier polishing the stone. This is where the more time that you spend before in-person classes drilling the basics, such as posta, footwork, body mechanics such as this, the more it'll just become automatic. You won't even think about it anymore. And then you'll get more out of the drills in class, and you'll get more out of the free play, because you'll be more relaxed in the free play and the drills, which means you'll be less tense. Turns into more endurance, faster response times, and that's what we're looking for. We're essentially training our bodies in the language of a martial art to the point where we're so fluent that we can just have on-the-fly casual conversations, even sometimes between multiple people at the same time, no sweat. So that's the goal. As well as in isolation, just trying to keep from climbing the walls and screaming at each other. So, we're going to switch back to the right foot and the right hand. Let's take a look at the same action except just as a wrist cut. So we're going to keep our wrist stationary without moving the elbow and just rotate around the wrist. So here we have just the wrist rotating. Now it goes to, it's Bode's commenting that with a well-balanced weapon, so a well-balanced sword, the sword wants to do these actions. So once you get used to them, and you pick up a well-balanced sword, it seems to just flow in your hand. It just wants to make all these rotations, and you just basically get out of the way and let it do what it wants to do, which is the thing of beauty. With training tools such as a hammer, it will feel more awkward, right? Let's face it, it's not a sword, but you have a little bit of weight, you have reference points, the hammer head and the hammer spikes, and you can definitely go through the motions, right? Now we're going to switch back to the left hand, and we're going to do the wrist cut in the left hand again to the inside. For those that have done this for a while and get bored, or perhaps they're already very strong, have very strong wrists and arms, then they can use heavier hammers, right? Looking over at my bench here, I've got lighter hammers, I've got Standard 16-ounce hammers have got 32-ounce hammers. Heck, there's even a 4-pound sledge. Now that leads to the conversation of mace ball exercises, which we'll look at in another day, but essentially using a 4, 6, or 8-pound sledgehammer in order to exercise is another thing that we can do as part of these isolation exercises. I like to use it as a stand-in for a sword or for a pole axe, going through poster drills and body mechanic drills such as this. Let's switch back to the right hand and the right foot. So what have we done? We started it with kind of a loose wrist and shoulder cut to the inside, and then we were doing just the wrist cut to the inside. Now we're going to do wrist, shoulder, and arm. So we're going to take the back, we're going to come out for the impact, and we're going to recover, and we're going to take the, I'm going to step back a bit, we're going to take the arm down. So this is a gross motor movement, right? And then have the acceleration come out from beside our head. So that we have making a circle, around, and then strike. Now, as I was saying earlier, there are graduations. There are different levels of this. It's not a quantum exercise where it can be elbow, shoulder, or wrist. You could have a little bit of shoulder, but mostly elbow. You could have a little bit of elbow, but mostly wrist. You could have a lot of shoulder, or you could have something in between, right? So this is where, going through the motions, you can actually set yourself to one motion, let's say the full shoulder motion, and then on each one just shorten it a little bit until eventually you're just doing elbow motions. Your shoulders staying, and then eventually you're just doing a little bit of elbow, and then you're just doing wrist motions, right? Over to the left hand, left foot, same thing. We started with wrist, then we went to, actually we started with elbow and then we went to wrist. So that's a misnomer. We started with elbow, then went to wrist. Now we're going to go to full shoulder. All the way back, all the way forward, turn it over. So the main things we're looking at here is chambering, having the hammer head forward, coming forward in this acceleration arc, turning over after the impact, retreating with the false edge back, and then turning over. And then turning back over, coming through, and accelerating out. Now, we've been doing all of this without any foot motion. Why do we use steps? We use steps to change distance, so to close with an opponent, to move away from an opponent, to change sides, to change lines. But we also use it in order to add momentum or add energy to the blow, right? So force equals 1/2 mv squared. So the velocity going forward is one of the main things. Now with a shorter weapon like this, we only have this much distance between the hand and the hammer, so that acceleration phase is shorter, right, for the actual rotation of the weapon. So in this case, it's more the combined speed and mass of the body plus the weapon, right? So this is where the big shoulder motion has a longer acceleration arc, right? And if you had a right foot, so left foot forward, and if you have a right foot step, right, you've got your weight behind it. You can get generally half your weight behind it if you time it right. So that's what we're looking at. So if anybody says a hammer isn't a dangerous weapon, they're wrong. I disagree with them, right? You can get all this weight behind you, and see how the weapon is between me and the screen? This is part of what keeps us safe. You'll hear us talk about true time. If I was fighting Daniel, he'd have to deal with that, and to get to me, he'd have to go through that. Or most likely he'd step to the side and attack my arm. That's what he'd probably do, right? So let's do that a couple of times. Left foot forward, and step away from the screen a bit if you've got space, and step. And then we're going to step back with the right foot as we turn this over and recover. So now we're operating in 3D. Going out and back. Now, if you're space constrained, these do not have to be large steps, right? We can be here I can go here and then here. Just a little left foot, right foot forward, right foot back. You can feel your weight landing with the blow. Now you'll see different placements of the left hand, right? I've been keeping it mostly down here at Iron Gate. Sometimes you'll see it creeping up to here because my inclination, my training, is to strike with the left hand with the right, right? You'll see that with the dagger strikes as well. The left hand goes with the right because then the left hand can do other things. It can punch, fish, fish. So we can strike or we can strike. So this hand waving is assuming, let's say I'm facing Daniel and he comes out to block my weapon with his weapon, right? So Daniel, I'm going to ask you to demonstrate. Good. So Daniel's going to hold his weapon out. I've come in and he's blocked the shaft of his weapon with the shaft of mine. And neither one of us are going to sit there and look at each other. We're going to disengage and find another line, which is what we call fighting at largo. In the Fiore system is fighting with the weapon. Or if his hand's down at his waist and my hand is here, I'm going to grab the inside of his wrist, turn it over, or push his elbow, like in the case where, so if you go move your hand to the left, so I push his elbow, that opens up his left line. So now I can strike that side, and he's going to go back to the other side to block that. Now I can fish to the inside and strike to that side. So as soon as we get to that spot, right, as soon as he sees me starting to fish, he should be stepping back or he should be counter fishing. So these are advanced topics. I'm getting into the weeds, and I'll retreat back to the basics in a second. But Daniel, if you come into a counter there, and he's got his hand there, right? So I didn't have my hand there, he did. He's going to totally take that line. The only thing that would maybe save me is if I get back and over, in which case he's going to go to the other line. He'll retract the weapon and go to the other side. And if you wouldn't mind holding up your hammer, Daniel, holding it up like this, that's a nice hammer. That's a lineman's hammer. So I have a shorter hammer today than Daniel does. His is about here. That's an excellent one to use for these sorts of things. They're usually a bit more expensive, but occasionally you can see them on sale, or you might find them online for sale. So that, in my mind, is much closer to a footman's mace than this one. This one does the job for what we're doing, but I have hammer envy right now. Good job on that hammer. So, going back into basics. We were on the right, left foot forward, and we were stepping with the right foot as we came in. And then we were taking our left hand. So let's extract back. As we strike in, we're going to bring our left hand with our right hand. So then it lands on our left forearm to left inside of elbow. So we do this with dagger, right? And you'll see something similar in the Bolognese art, I believe, because now it's going to be accessible, right? So there's nothing wrong with having it to the hip, having it up here if we're fighting at extreme distance. But with a short weapon like this, anything shorter than your forearm, essentially, right, the contact distance is going to be closer. So we're going to have our left hand come up with our right hand, and then when we come back, it's going to come back with the other hand. So we're going to have the left hand come out, and then turn over, and then the left hand's going to retreat back. Now there's nothing wrong with putting it back to Iron Gate here while you wait for the next phase, and then have it come back and join each other. Because then it's accessible. If I'm coming back and Daniel's coming in, my left-handed Iron Gate is accessible to use some of our dagger blocks, which I would come out at the wrist. So we're going to have the left hand come out with the right hand, and we're just going to do a few of these. We know the recovery. We're going to be doing full arm, wrist, shoulder, elbow cuts with a step, with the left hand included. So let's do 10 of these on the right, then 10 of these on the left. Everybody good? We're all good? Good. You done on the right? And strike out. Left hand with the right hand. Turn it over. And then step back. Left hand going back to the hip, which is Iron Gate. And again. And 8 more. Good. Now we're going to do the same thing on the left. Left hand, right foot forward. We're going to start from post Udana. Right hand at the hip, so at iron gate. Left hand comes forward as it goes past our head. So now we have the true edge engaged and we're starting to put our weight on the front foot. And as soon as it goes past our head, we're going to start stepping. Our right hand's coming up to our left hand and striking. And then bringing the weapon up and then recovering. And then I'm going to take the right hand down to the waist again. And then striking past. Right hand comes to the left hand, strikes, turns over, and then back. Keep doing that for a minute. Going to check something.